history as a social worker and in the justice system it has been part of his formation as a rector, as the inaugural rector of Saints Elizabeth and Barbara Orthodox Mission, which is in Happy Valley. And for those who don't know where Happy Valley is, that's at the south of Adelaide. Shall we call it the southernmost part of Adelaide, or thereabouts? Thereabouts. This has been a mission where he has led it to exemplify the friendliness and the hospitality of a church community. As I know that my parishioners who have visited can attest to, that it is a place where people are welcome and are made to feel part of the community. And so, Father Barnabas, it's a pleasure to introduce you today to our Evangelism Symposium, and I look forward to hearing what you're able to give about parish hospitality. Give them a big welcome.
Thank you, Father. So it was just over 30 years ago that we started a mission in an Anglican church in the southern suburbs of Adelaide. And the Anglican rector was very open to us being there. And I came across an icon that I'd never seen before, which I purchased for him, which was an icon of Christ in the boat with all his disciples. And on the shore of the lake surrounding the boat were all the heretics shooting arrows, throwing rocks, and basically trying to disrupt the boat. And so I actually bought it as a bit of a joke to give to him. Within about 3 weeks, he resigned and converted to Orthodoxy, which didn't do much to enhance our relationship with the Anglican Church. When they installed the new rector, of course, I went to the installation, and he showed great interest in talking to me, much to the horror of the committee. So within a few weeks, we received a letter from the committee saying, we probably might possibly need the church at the time when you booked it. So thank you very much, but can you find somewhere else to go? So that was part of our journey. And fortunately, a hall became available, which is miraculous in itself, because halls are in very short supply in the southern suburbs. So I dutifully met with the governors of the hall, and in talking to them, they said, yes, we'd love you to take on a lease here on Sunday morning, as long as there's no incense and no candles. And I tried to negotiate with them the incense and the candles. I said, we can pay more insurance and we can cover it, and they said no. And they could see that I was quite horrified that we wouldn't be able to get the hall, and they suggested a Roman Catholic hall, which I didn't know anything about, which was just around the corner from this particular hall. And I guess traditionally, those of you who understand our history, is usually not that good with the Roman Catholics, a lot more amenable in the Anglican persuasion. So I drove around there and dressed as a priest, and it was being used by a group, a dementia group, who look after dementia patients during the week. And they invited me in, and it was a strange hall. There was just this concertina door on the western side. And they said, oh, here, Father, we'll open the door for you. And I opened the door, and there was an altar and a space for the services. So it was a very controversial design. It was to find out later, built in the 80s, but quite controversial combination of hall and sacred space. But when I looked in the altar area, what struck me was they had a scripture from the previous Sunday's church. And the scripture was, forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do. Now this is quite significant to our understanding of St. Elizabeth and Barbara Parish. St. Elizabeth, when her husband was blown up by the Bolsheviks, she had a cross erected on the site of where he died. And on that cross, she had engraved, forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do. And it was like, this inner voice says, I have reserved this for you. So that was my impression. Very strange. I don't often get impressions like that, but it was very surreal. And having not even spoken to the Roman Catholic priest, but I was to phone and meet with him, and he was so amenable to us being there. He was thrilled that divine liturgies would be served there because the parish had been slowly decreasing. And as the parish area has been dedicated to the Mother of God, he was just so thrilled that we would have divine liturgies there on Sunday. So that's where we've been for the past 12 or so years, 12 and a half years, our 13th year this year. And it's been an ideal situation because we started off with a lot of children, some of which have moved overseas to the United States, where we visited them just recently. My wife and I just returned yesterday morning at 4 o'clock from the United States and visited a family that were very much a key part of our community, a family of 8 children. And so it was just a joy to be with them in the United States. So they just returned. So if I fall asleep halfway through my presentation, I'll understand why. And so one of the first things I emphasised with our congregation is that don't worry about being spiritual. The first thing I want you to concentrate on is be friendly. Just be friendly with people as they come in. Ask them their names and do all you can to engage with them. And then we can worry about the spiritual aspects of the Orthodox persuasion later on. So that was my main emphasis of trying to build a community that would love, truly love, and demonstrate the love of Christ. Now, with every presentation, of course, great ideas are never taught, they're always caught. So if there's anything that you take from my talk this morning, just anything that you write down, remember that great ideas caught, they're never taught. And unfortunately, I wasn't able to do a PowerPoint presentation, so it's a bit like chalk and talk. So hopefully you can bear with me. To get to hospitality, I need to take you on a journey, and some of you have already shared about your journeys, your Orthodox journey with me, and I'm so thrilled that you're all on this journey with us. Our journey continues until we cross through the doors of mortality, that's a certainty. But it is a journey of discovery, it is a journey of wonder, it is a journey of becoming. And our praxis, or our practice, affects our theoria, our theosis, our becoming as Christ. So in order to talk about hospitality, I've got to talk about Orthodox phronema. Now some of you may know this term, and I thought if Father Stephen was here today, he would know that because he's interested in the ancient Greeks and in setting up a school that teaches on that line. But what is the Orthodox phronema of hospitality? Now the word phronema is an interesting word. It comes from the Greek word phren, P-H-R-E-N, which means diaphragm. And to the Homeric Greek, they considered the locus of one's intellect and spiritual activity was the diaphragm, which is an interesting concept. During the classic period, of course, the Greek philosophers developed the idea of thinking, or the mode of thinking, and they limited the phren to just a physical meaning. And then they used a derivative of the word called phronesis, which means the inner thoughts connected to activity. So this idea of linking thoughts with our actions. And it differs from really understanding wisdom, which is Sophia, is the Greek word Sophia, which is a purely intellectual pursuit. Coming from, of course, a Protestant background, our pursuits are generally rational, are generally intellectual. So phronesis is that connection between our thought life and our praxis and what we practice. And the Greeks saw this phronesis as a gift from God. Isn't that interesting? That it was divine plus phronemon should rule all men. But this gift of phronesis should rule all men. And it was considered a virtue. And in the Latin, the word phronimon was rendered prudentia, or prudence in English. And of course, I operated in the courts. It was jurisprudence. It was the thoughts which motivated your actions. And to the Latins, it was included as one of the foremost great cardinal virtues, along with courage, justice, and temperance, or moderation. Of these virtues, only phronesis was considered as an intellectual quality about it. The Stoic philosophers classified it as a science, phronesis as a science, Aristotle as intellectual virtue. So it was a practical knowledge, a practice or praxis that involved both behaviour in the public and private matters. So this word phronema. We move on to the Old Testament Septuagint, which talks about phronesis, which is characteristic of God, translated into English, understanding. By phronesi, understanding, God created or established the heavens. So we see the use of this word phronesi in the Old Testament. But it also realised that God was beyond human understanding and human comprehension. In Isaiah 40, in verse 28, it says, his understanding, his phronesi, is unsearchable. God's wisdom and understanding and goodness were all connected qualities. So then we move on to the New Testament, where the verb is phroneo and the noun is phronema. Jesus rebuked Peter in Matthew 16 when Christ begins to talk about his passion, and Peter said, "May it never be, Lord." And so that's the first time we come across this word phroneo. You are not thinking, you're not phroneo of the things of God, but of men. To acquire the correct phronema is something that the Apostle Paul encourages his followers. He mentions it 3 times in Romans chapter 8, and this is a translated version of Romans chapter 8, verses 5 to 7. So 3 times he uses the word phronema. For those who are according to the flesh, they have their minds phronesin on the things of the flesh, but those who are according to the Spirit, on the things of the Spirit. For the mindset, phronema, of the flesh is death, but the mindset, phronema, of the Spirit is life and peace. For the mindset, phronema, of the flesh is hostile to God, for it does not submit to God's laws, for it cannot. So phronema, we understand, is also synonymous with the term having the mind of Christ. In 1 Corinthians 2:16, Paul encourages us to have the mind of Christ. Although the word mind is from the word nous. And nous is a very difficult term to understand. One of the best translations I've had of nous is that place where emotion and reason meet. So we get back to the word diaphragm, the place where emotion and reason meet. And we are spiritual because we have this mind of Christ, this phronema of Christ. And as the church is the body of Christ, to have the mind of Christ, one must belong to the body. In the early beginnings of the church, the Christians were encouraged to acquire and maintain a specific Christian phronema, which was about attitude, the manner of thought, and the way of behaving. So there was an interrelation of those things: attitude, manner of thought, and way of behaving. So understanding what is the Orthodox phronema about hospitality. And of course the word hospitality is an interesting word too, because it comes from the Latin hospice. And it formed from this a meaning of host, of guest, and of stranger, this word hospice. And of course it's where we get the word hostis, which means stranger or enemy, because we get the same word hostile from that word. Or hospital, which was a guest chamber a lodgings or an inn. So of course those New Testament scholars will immediately think of the parable of the Good Samaritan who was taken to a hospital. And it fits into the Orthodox phronema because basically we see sin as a sickness, and we see we need to be cured of the sickness. And the place for that cure is the hospital, is the hospice. And we understand that the world contains broken and fallen humanity that still lies by the roadside awaiting the presence of Christ. And of course, we understand from the Old Testament that Abraham, in Genesis chapter 18, expresses this hospitality as a sacred duty to treat strangers and friends alike, welcoming one another into our homes, our communal spaces and our lives. So, in the New Testament, this word is translated philoxenia. Philoxenia. And philoxenia means love the stranger. Means love, be a friend to the stranger. From philos, which means love or affection, and xenia, which means stranger. It's a beautiful concept to love a stranger. Peter exhorts us in 1 Peter 4, 9-10, offer hospitality without grumbling. Philoxenia. Offer philoxenia without grumbling or complaining. Paul commands us in Romans 12:13, be eager to show philoxenia. And in the letter to the Philippians, he uses the word phronema 9 times in various forms. This idea of this gift of hospitality is the understanding of the early church. It causes believers to be joyfully open with their homes and in their meeting places, and to give rest and refreshment to visitors. And it's so reflective of the early church. And one of the reasons of my journey to Orthodoxy was to try to understand what was the dynamics, what was the phronema of the early church. What is it that created such vibrant communities that love not their life unto death? What created communities that were soon suke, one in soul with one another? They cared deeply, fulfilling the words of Christ, who said the commandments are fulfilled by these 2 actions: to love the Lord your God with all your mind, with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength, and to love your neighbour as yourself. So the phronema of the early church was to show hospitality. In our journey to Orthodoxy, of course, there are so many roadblocks within a lot of our parishes. It's not a bad thing, but it's just an understanding of what those roadblocks are. What are those barriers for us to show this phronema to the world? And most of you, or probably some of you, have had varying experiences when you first contacted Orthodoxy. Needless to say, my wife and I were ignored on the first occasion in a service that we didn't understand, and that was a very quiet drive home that morning. And the second Orthodox church we attended, I was assaulted because I made the mistake of crossing my legs because I had no understanding of what the protocols were. So from being ignored to being assaulted, and yet we're still here, we're still today, following the phronema of the early church. So I impressed upon people to be friendly, to ask questions, to ask people's names, to know their names. Before, a few weeks ago, I finished reading a book by Father Evan Amatus. Have any of you looked at his book called Reclaiming the Great Commission? A Roadmap to Parish Health, was published in 2022. He's looked at that book, yeah. It's a very practical way of looking at how to evangelize, how to make your church user-friendly. Father Evans, of course, is in Loveland, Colorado. I didn't get a chance to meet him on this visit, but he was a Master's of Theology of Holy Cross Seminary. He has a BA in Philosophy with an emphasis on business management. And he talks about having graduated as a young parish priest and asking his bishop at the time, which was Metropolitan Isaiah, whom I have met, asking him not to assign him to an established church, but for him to go where there wasn't a church, to start fresh. From Palestine to Egypt and visited one of the hermits. After he had welcomed us, we asked him, when you receive guests, why don't you fast? In Palestine, they do, he answered. Fasting is always possible, but I cannot keep you here forever. Fasting is useful and necessary, but we can choose to fast or not fast. God's law demands from us perfect love. I receive Christ when I receive you. And of course this echoes Patrick of Ireland when asked by his monks, how do we treat people? And his response was, you treat them as if they are Christ. So I receive Christ when I receive you, so I must do all I can to show you love. When I have said goodbye to you, I can take up my rule of fasting again. The sons of the bridegroom cannot fast while the bridegroom is with them. When he is taken from them, then they can fast. A brother came to another hermit, and as he was taking his leave, he said, forgive me, Abba, for preventing you from keeping your rule. The hermit answered, my rule is to welcome you with hospitality and to send you on your way in peace. May God grant you wisdom, courage to embark on this drama of hospitality, of loving the stranger, through the prayers of our Elder Fathers.
Barnabas, thank you very much for your presentation today. Parish hospitality, as we know, is such an important thing, and your talk has made that abundantly clear to us. We're going to be going on to roundtable discussions on this theme of hospitality, using Father Barnabas's talk as a foundation for what we will be discussing. How is it that we'll be able to be applying this to our own communities? But it's my pleasure to give you thanks in a slightly more tangible way, when in the gift of hospitality that we hope that you can use in one way or another. Thank you. Work that we were just mentioning, and looking around, I'm not great at estimating numbers, but I would really love to have groups of about half a dozen. Half a dozen is much easier for me to count. And by the way, your table is about that size. But just in case you thought that this was going to be as easy as turning in, it's not, because there's something in me that just won't allow it. Yeah, sorry. Now, hospitality. The requirements for showing this hospitality, to welcoming visitors to your parish, is going to be very, very much dependent on the size of your parish. So if you've got a very small community of, say, a dozen people, then I hope that that would be very different to a larger parish. Your community of 12, you know who the new people are. You know them by name, who the new people are. Your community of 20, at around the 45 mark, that particular growth size, that's where it starts to shift, where you know who all the people are. You may not know all the details of their life, but you know their name, probably. But once you get over that, the 75 barrier, and then the 120 and more barrier, once you get to those kind of size of churches, things change. And So that's the reason why I'm going to be asking the groups to be put together based on roughly how many people you have on Sunday mornings. So we're going to call that small, medium and large because for no other reason than that's what McDonald's calls its drinks. So I know that there are descriptions of small, medium and large referring to parish sizes, and if you heard what those particular sizes were, you'd probably laugh. But let's leave that for another day. So those under 50, those over 100, you'll probably have one group under 50 folks and one group of the over 100 folks. And then if you're roughly somewhere in the middle, I don't know, then there's probably about 3 or 4 groups that will be here. From there, if you can make it a little bit balanced, like the group should probably have a clergyman or a matushka or something along those lines, and that will make sure that we're sharing as much as we're able around the country. It's that cross-pollination that we're looking for. Oh, you do this, well, we do that. That's going to be one of the big takeaways. So please find your groups. So we found our groups. We found that we've got a lot of different parishes that are in the groups, but roughly equal: 8 and 8, 6 and 6, 2 medium groups, 1 small, 1 large. It's nice that we section so well. So what we're looking at here is how do we do parish hospitality? What do we do about parish hospitality? So this is what your as-is good ideas. The good ideas that you already have. We're discussing parish hospitality. What are the things that we currently do that are good or that are pretty good? And then, what can we do? What can we do? Remember, the ultimate goal is going to be what can we bring back. So make sure that you're writing down the good ideas. You're writing down the actual ideas. For the laity in the room, which is most of you, the ideas that you can go to your rector and say, I would like to help you to put this into practice. Does that make sense, everyone? I got a couple of yeses, but that's not very inspiring to this former high school teacher.
Yes.
Hey, very good.
Yes.
So, what's the first thing that we're going to talk about?
What we do well.
What we do well. Fantastic. If you go around in a circle, you're doing good stuff.